should tell you that we are live and recording for that nice performance. The internet is standing and applauding.
That's a song you can learn for free using the app Flowkey.
Wait, when did you start learning that for free? Is that 1 or 2 days work?
Well, that was I got that in a day. Yeah, it was cool. That's the free one you get.
That's so cool.
Convinced me to lay down $20 to buy the app. No, to rent the app, to get access to songs for 1 month. For $120, I could get a year, or for $20, I get a month. But it's like one of these auto-renew things. So I like set a thing in my calendar to tell me to cancel it in a month, because I figure that I'll be excited about it for a month and use the hell out of it, and then I'll lose excitement and keep paying for it, which is their whole model.
First, I was going to say, what? We're not getting sponsored by them, but you actually did sort of an anti-commercial. Get it for a month.
No, it's amazing though. It really is amazing the way that it works.
What does it do again? It sort of hand feeds you the
yeah.
lesson?
It's just like, it really does feel like there's like 3 people, because there's all these simultaneous ways that it's showing you what to do, and so yeah, it really feels like you're getting the first class treatment of, now let's make it as easy as possible for you to, and we'll play it for you, and we'll show it, and we'll move the music, and if you want to do a little section, you want to do one hand at a time, just push this button, you want to do the other one, you want to listen, you want to slow it down, anything.
Wow.
It's just like it's like really been optimized. And yeah, like I learned that Bach thing in a day. I haven't played it in a week, and so I was sort of surprised that I remembered it. But
that's the one that Yo-Yo Ma famously plays, isn't it?
I
think that's his big hit. That's his stage clearer.
It's good, man. It's a cool song.
Yeah.
Got mostly white keys, which helps me because I'm really
racist.
Yeah. No,
how do we follow that?
It's dumb.
Well, that's very cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah, so that's been taking all my creative energy. I mean, I really did right before I got into that app. I think the app sort of rescued me from a little bit of despair. Last week I did a little bit of tweaking on that video, and then afterwards I was like,
well, okay, so you were saying right before we were like, oh, let's record this. You were saying that you're like sort of stuck wandering in the wilderness right now creatively. You don't really know what to do. But like 1 week ago, you were all excited. You were working on this like video where you were sort of green screening and shrinking yourself up at the keyboard. Your hair was aflame, and now here we are a week later. And that's how it works, isn't it? I mean, it's not like that's shocking. We both know, and everyone who's creative knows, that you can go from those highs to those lows really quickly. But I thought maybe we could pick that apart.
How can we pick?
What's wrong with you?
I did. I mean, I think there's something about the song. I'm annoyed, I think, with the song in general. Just like, I feel like
the song that you were recording that video for.
Yeah, and that makes it hard to be excited about continuing it, because I feel like it's very self-indulgent, and it's like, it's like both self-aggrandizing and whiny. It's content.
Well, here's sort of an almost obvious thing to just throw on the table, which is this: like, one of the things that's so hard, and maybe like 1 million people a year figure this out, creative people a year figure this out, but it's like, it's so hard to just be in your cave and work on something and keep up that hair aflame excitement. And this is why you have like writing groups and things, right? Like if you share and you bounce it off someone and you get their reactions and their ideas and your energy, then it reinvigorates you. But like, there's something about the long slog through the tunnel where it's just you and no one else, no other energy. You know, that's why it just would be such a dream to be able to be in sort of a creative space with somebody, or like have a cohort of people who get it, who you show your project and they get excited, and that reinvigorates your energy on it.
Yeah, no, I think that I think that's really true. Like people, like bouncing things off people is like oxygen, I think, for a creative project. And without it, it actually really feels like that. It feels like when you're working by yourself and not sharing it with people, it just starts to feel starved,
Yeah.
like it's like, and then it sort of feels like it dies. Like that's sort
Yeah.
of how it felt this week. I sort of felt like the project got asphyxiated.
Yeah.
I had to turn to something else
Yeah.
to avert my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that sort of helps explain why so often I definitely, and I think the same is true for you, we'll work on something, be excited about it, give it up at some point, and then months or years later come back to it and be like, oh, this was great. Why didn't I? And in that moment, and it needed someone to come in with some bellows.
Yeah, there's this guy this one of these producers that a different person that I follow said something about the creative valley of death, and is you go from thinking something is going to change the world to it starts getting worse and worse in your mind to where you feel like it's the biggest piece of shit ever, and it's just like it's the worst, and that's the valley of death. And then you sort of like slog through, and you sort of like, okay, maybe I'll put something together, and you realize, okay, it's not that bad, and you put it out there.
Right.
But his whole methodology is, how can you shorten the time from enthusiasm to being finished so much that you can maybe avoid the valley of death.
Interesting.
The valley of despair.
I mean, of course, it also just helps to know it. That's, I think, why people name it, because if you're just like, oh, I'm in my valley of despair, I hate this, I think it's pointless, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
I had a thing this week where maybe it was actually even last Friday, after having a creative day. So my daughter's friend came over, and her dad, and he's this like cool sort of ceramicist and artist. And I was just like, hey, maybe I can come film this, a pilot episode of this show I'm thinking about doing. He's like, yeah, it's great. And I was just saying, okay, here we go. I got a friend. He'd be a good first subject. We have a fun banter together. He has this like whole kiln. He like has built his own kiln in his backyard, this sort of chimney, and he fires it with charcoal or like wood fire. I mean, it's this whole sort of visually very cool type of thing. So I just gotta, and so here's the path. I just gotta like choose a date with him. Then I gotta go find a camera person and a sound person who can work on that day. And in that moment, it felt like it's farther and farther, harder to grasp. I've come back to it a couple times during the week and gone like, oh, I guess how do I even choose a date, and how far in advance, and then do I, how it's just like it starts to recede and break your brain a little bit. But even just talking about it with you now, again, this is maybe proving the point. It's just sort of like, oh, it reinvigorates the idea, and like, oh, wait, I could do that again.
Yeah, so can you do it? I mean, it seems like this is a good...
Yeah, sure, I can.
No, I mean, like, what anything happened with that cameraman? Did he ever get back to you?
He never did, no. And of course, I could bug him, but I sort of thought, okay, let that one. That's another lesson learned for me. I think I've learned this lesson so many times. For a camera person, you come to them with a date and a rate. A date and a rate, and that's how camera people work.
They want you to set the rate.
They want you to set the date and the rate, and I keep coming at people like I want to sort of set my creative crew, my like team of visionaries who are going to collaborate. I want to do it like it's, I don't know, I have a different vision of it. Well, I was just reading this morning about some documentary that's out that's supposed to be really good about the early years of Sesame Street. Have you heard about this?
No.
It's right up your alley. It's just like they had this idea. They got a bunch of creatives in the room together with a bunch of educators. This was in the 70s, and they're just like, this new TV thing is addictive and engaging, and how can we make it educational? And they just sort of put that mix of people together and figured out how to do something. And it was right off the bat, it started hitting a home run, and it was making a big splash, and people were excited about it. And so then they had to keep up with this bar that they had set. Anyway, it sounds just awesome. Like, that to me is the dream.
This is so funny because we've been thinking about, in terms of digital products, like we should build a product like, what if we recognize that kids are in love with video games, and the educational video games out there are sort of shitty?
Yeah.
They're okay. This, like, it's been started, but nobody's really owning the space. Like, what if that was? What if we did that?
Yeah.
Like, what if we just got a bunch of people together and like started like looking at the environment and saying,
Yeah.
okay, how can we make this stuff really fun? I mean, obviously a lot of ground has been.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking about this like flow key thing. I mean, it really.
That would be cool. When you were talking about that too, I was thinking that would be a fun thing to work on every day.
I mean, there are ways to optimize all the different.
But then what about this other thing? We're talking about this very thing of like not having your creative community. There probably are sites that do this, but it would be cool if you didn't, have to, like, you and I have this weekly thing where we talk about creative stuff. That's even probably a lot better than a lot of people have. Like, you've done these classes before where you were sharing your music every couple days and getting feedback and whatever, but it seems like there's room for that kind of thing in the internets.
Well, yeah, and there's a thing called Hit Record or Hit Record. I think it's doubly named on purpose. It's cool. But so I signed up for that because it's like this creative community, but it would be like, but I couldn't quite figure out how. Like, here I am, sort of like, hey, I've got all these projects, I'd like to collaborate, and so I wonder if it's helpful actually to that there is a product out there, and you have a vision of what you want to do, and you try to do it in this existing thing, and where it falls short can be the inspiration for what your thing will do instead. But it makes me wonder, because I mean, it's a collaboration machine where all these people, they start these things, but I don't actually know how to start a project. I clicked that I might be interested in voice acting, and so then it's sort of like I got a prompt to be like, record these 4 things so that people can hear you doing voices and stuff, and I just didn't do it. So I mean, I could potentially just get into that. I mean, I'm sure it could be really cool for a certain community, but I do also think that there's room in the space for many such things.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that there needs to be different pockets in different ways. Like, oh, I like working like that, and like this is a little different, and each one could have its own little core community.
Yeah, it's true. And we've talked before. I feel like just even trying to put my music together and find a place to put it, the existing sites kind of fall short of what I would want. So it makes you think, well, even though it seems like that territory has been covered, maybe there's still how many times we talked about this, but we should spend our days doing that kind of thing. I mean, if we're going to spend your days, like, it'd be awesome to spend your days being a rock star or whatever, film star, whatever you want to do most, dance ballet, as we always say. But as a runner up, as long as you're going to be spending your day working on technology, for instance, like we do, it would be really cool to be working on something like that.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, it's the same thing, of everything. It's when you know your next step. I think that's the thing. It's I was feeling, I was wrote something in my journal, which the other day, my sort of daily writing ritual, and I was saying, like, it's sort of torturous to feel like you have a North Star. If you have a compass heading, it's telling you, it's like, sense of direction. It's saying, go this way. And then you're going this way, and then you get to basically the Grand Canyon, and you're just like, oh, my compass heading is saying go that way, but I can't. There's a cliff here, I can't get over. So you start going up and down the canyon looking for a bridge. There's no bridge, but then there's a couple of places where every now and then, this is what like an idea feels like, when you're like, oh my God, I know what I could do. Right. I could do something. And it feels like there's this like peak out in the canyon that maybe you could start building a bridge. You start gathering some branches, you start building a bridge, you got all this enthusiasm. And then you get to the point where you run out of branches,
yeah,
to the bridge, cross it, you're like, comparatively, like you're an inch
Yeah.
across versus
Well,
the miles that you have to get, and you're just like, oh God, why did I think that this was going to be a good place to cross? And then you have to go back, and then you're looking for another place to cross.
yeah.
That really feels like that's my that's my torture. It's just like I'm constantly feeling this strong sense of direction that is into nowhere.
Yeah. Two things. One, I just realized I had this earpiece in this entire time, but it's not on, and I'm just listening to the sound out of there, and it's going to be feeding back, so that's great. But the problem, I agree with the Grand Canyon thing, except that if you're actually running into the Grand Canyon, you would see it with your eyes, and you'd know that that actually was the Grand Canyon. And I feel like in creative life, so many times it's much more like there's a fog everywhere, and then you're like, wait, I think we're at the Grand Canyon, and then it's foggy again, and you can't see. And then maybe it clears for a second. You're like, oh wait, there's steps here, and you just walk down the step. Sometimes it's not intimidating at all, and you see the path perfectly well. And sometimes it feels like the Grand Canyon, and maybe the landscape is constantly shifting. It's not always actually as bad as it feels. In fact, it's rarely as bad as it feels.
Yeah. But isn't there really a chasm between, like you just said, like spending all day like building an app that helps creative people, whatever, that does this thing to both be something like that. Like, there is a chasm between here and there. You, at some point, you have to have enough of a solid something to sort of like, a business plan that you can then pitch to sort of like get somebody to fund it or something
for that kind of thing. Yeah.
Whereas like, if the goal is to build a beautiful camp on this side of the Grand Canyon,
yeah,
then I think it's true. Like you can sort of like, and that's a beautiful thing maybe, and that's what we should be doing. And I feel like that's what we are doing. I mean, I feel like your life is beautiful. I feel like my life is beautiful. There's nothing to complain about.
Yeah.
And little by little, we are creating our little paradises, or I feel, speak for myself. I mean, I feel like I'm creating my own, the place, my own little happy place, which is great. But yet I have this pull to sort of like, to do something bigger or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that seems like there's a real chasm, because just because we're working people, it would take what really the other side of the thing is just like 80 hours a week being creative.
Well, yeah. And it's funny because I have that fantasy for sure. Just like, if I could only just, do this full time, and I put so much care and energy and skill and whatever, develop a career worth of developed skills into my day job, however many hours a week. If I could only put all that into creative, of course I would make it. Like I have the tools. But of course the other side, and so that's the fantasy, is I just want to, what if I just quit for X months? But of course if I did that, I might just sit there, cheek on my fist and just sort of be like, okay, wait, what do I do now?
Well, because you're missing probably the most important ingredient, which is the most impossible ingredient to get. We can buy a keyboard, you can buy a nice camera, but what you can't, with the real key ingredient is 3 other people that equip too, that have the same vision. And that's the chasm that it seems impossible, where you can get, if you get, I mean, even just the two of us, if we could like both like quit and have a vision and just like spend 6 months doing it and work at it as hard or harder than we do everything, then you have a crack at it. But I mean, and maybe some people do it because they have a solo vision that they can do on their own, but I need other people.
Yeah.
do it by myself.
Yeah, me too. And maybe that's why I always harken back to this idea of like what it was like in your 20s. Because I feel like in your 20s, there were people around and you're just like, hey, should we, people would jump in and work on something. Yeah, it's so isolating to just be like the one person trying, with some crazy dream. And then you go back and forth between pursuing that and feeling like, what am I doing? This is absurd. This is embarrassing. This is unbecoming,
Yeah.
Totally. All right. Well, so okay, how are we going to get you unstuck on it? I mean, so do you want to get unstuck on your project, your video? It was so cool. Your song, it was a good song. It was a very fun video.
Well, I think, one of the things is I have a peppering of ideas. One of them, so there's a couple of different things. I see this in 3 acts. So the first act, he's a little guy. He's trying to control things, but also like things are going out of control. Like he's making things shake, and he's like, so there's something that I have to figure out how to, I wish I had a sort of a film expert that could think about how, like, when you go to close up, when you sort of like what angle you use to point the hand to indicate that it's the hand that moves the thing over there, and how to shake the things, and just like almost like maybe how it would be storyboarded. So I'm a little stuck on that.
Maybe this is part of the problem. I'm interrupting here, but like you're a great musician and a creative person, and so you've written a song. By the way, my camera's about to go out, so we better wrap soon. You've written a song, and it's a great song, and you have these great ideas, but now you're trying to be a filmmaker. So that's part of the fun, is like, oh my gosh, now I'll try to figure out how to do this. But it's understandable that might get you 7 seconds of footage into the video and then sort of like peter out in exhaustion because you're like way out over your skis.
Yeah.
I mean, is that the problem? I mean, maybe this is to your point about getting a crew. Like if you could do this part, which is come up with song, come up with brilliant ideas, and then have people that you turn to be like, here's my crazy idea. And then they actually know how to do it and can see it through.
Yeah, and because I've spent too long waiting for something like that to appear, it seems like the next smartest thing to do is for me to start to learn some of these skills. I mean, I've always sort of I would like to develop these filmmaking skills, and so what better way to do it than in just trying out a project? But I do, maybe like because I'd like to be able to be more self-sufficient, and I'd like to be a better visual, be able to do the video stuff myself a little better. And so, maybe if I had some sort of a creative, like just a teacher that I could just be like, okay, I have this idea. How do I do it? And then they could, like, if I could find someone and pay them.
I'm kind of going the other direction in a way, which is now I'm getting more. I've always sort of done everything myself and done the video editing and set up a camera and whatever. And I'm exhausted by that. And I just know my own limitations there. And so I'm more going in the direction, like I told you about this idea of filming this friend of mine. I'm kind of going in the direction of like, I might not need a producer, but what if I just get a producer? What if I just like put some money in it and get a producer, have the producer help me hire the right talent?
How do you find a producer?
Well, actually, I know a friend of a friend who does it. Or, I don't know, I assume that there's probably websites where people list their freelance services.
And creative people, a lot of creative people got to always be looking for work, so you imagine. But I don't know how to find these people.
Yeah. Well, those are the choices, I guess. Do it all ourselves or find other people to do it with. And my record doing it all myself is mixed.
It's great, but you're like you said the last time, is like it's the amount that you can pull off. Yeah, it's just a man hours thing. You just get more people in that work, and
it's a bottleneck. All right, my camera's gonna give out. So all right.
Thanks, sir.
Let's figure out how to get you reinvigorated on this project or the next one.
All right.
Talk to you.
Thanks, man. Talk to you soon.